He never expected anything good to carry his name. For most of his 38 years, the only things life gave him were bruises, cold nights, and promises that fell apart faster than he could rebuild them. His son, Liam, was the only exception. The one thing he believed God placed in his hands, not to break him, but to save him. And yet even raising him, even loving him, had been a constant battle against circumstance. They had been homeless for 8 months now, 8 months of shelters, back seats of abandoned cars, dried ramen, and shivering before dawn. 8 months of pretending to his boy that adventure was the plan all along. So when the letter arrived, wrinkled, water-stained, shoved under the door of the church basement where they slept one night, he almost threw it away. It looked like a bill, or worse, a mistake with his name on it. But the old pastor urged him to read it. "Maybe God's nudging you," he had said quietly, as if afraid hope was fragile and might crack if he spoke too loud. Inside the envelope was a single handwritten message from a law office miles away. His great-grandfather had left him property, a lighthouse, on the northern coast. He stared at the words a long time. He knew almost nothing about the man. Just a name, Elias McCready, and a blurry photo from 1910 of a stern-faced keeper standing beside a massive stone tower overlooking waves that looked ready to swallow the world. He remembered his mother telling him once, long before she died, that the McCready men had salt in their blood, born too restless to ever stay in land. He had laughed back then. Now the words felt like a tug in his chest, a direction, a promise. "A lighthouse, Dad?" Liam whispered that night, eyes wide, excitement pushing all exhaustion aside. "Like a real one, with a spiral staircase and everything?" "Maybe," he said softly. "If it's even still standing. Can we go?" The question punched him. They had nowhere else to go, nowhere better. "Yeah," he murmured. "Yeah, buddy, we can go." They hitched rides north, slept under bridges when they had to, sometimes walked miles along lonely roads framed by cliffs and fog. Every step felt like walking toward something ancient, something waiting. And strangely, for the first time in a long time, he didn't feel ashamed of where they were going. When they finally reached the coast, the sea met them like a memory he never lived. Cold air thick with salt, seabirds crying overhead, wind carving lines across the sand. Liam stood frozen at the sight of the waves. "It's huge," he breathed. "It's like the whole sky fell down." "It kind of does that," his father murmured. He felt the same pull, that strange instinctual heaviness that said you are standing on the edge of the world. The lighthouse was another mile up the cliffs. They walked. And when the structure finally appeared through mist, tall, white, scarred by time, leaning slightly like an old man bearing secrets, the father stopped breathing for a moment. The tower stood on a rocky outcrop surrounded by wind-twisted grass and jagged stone. Beside it, a small keeper's house, roof patched with rusted tin, windows clouded by age. "This was Great-Grandpa's?" Liam whispered. "Looks like it." "It's awesome." The boy ran ahead, scout-like energy in small limbs, backpack bouncing. The father followed slower, taking in details, the cracked foundation, the stone steps worn smooth by decades of boots, the iron railing half swallowed by sea air. He placed a hand on the lighthouse wall, cold, solid, older than anything he'd ever touched. He felt the weight of inheritance for the first time. Not money, not fame, but history. A name deeper than homelessness. He wasn't ready for what happened next. The front door of the keeper's house groaned open under his hand. Dust swirled in the fading sunlight, catching motes like floating gold. Inside, a single room, a rusting wood stove. Shelves collapsed under the weight of old books. A cot that looked like no one had slept in it since the 1970s. Liam explored instantly, poking at everything that didn't look dangerous. "Dad," the boy called suddenly. "Look!" He held a wooden box, carved, intricate, locked by a metal clasp that looked newer than anything else in the room. "Where'd you find that?" "Behind the stove." His father took the box carefully. It was surprisingly heavy. On the lid, carved deep into the wood, was a symbol he didn't recognize, a ring of waves circling a sun. Beneath it, MM. "McCready," the father murmured. "Think it's treasure?" Liam's eyes sparkled. Maybe. He didn't want to give false hope, but his great-grandfather had not been a rich man, and yet, something in the box felt important, deliberate, like a message left behind. He set it aside for later and kept searching the room. There was a journal on the desk, brittle pages filled with looping handwriting. He flipped through. The entries were dated from the 1940s. Weather logs, notes on ships, repairs. Storm coming. God willing the light holds. Saw something in the water today. Too big to be a whale. Liam McCready born today. Named after Elias. One day, he'll take the light. The father froze. Liam. He looked at his son, named unknowingly after a McCready tradition. Something warm prickled in his chest. But further down the pages the entries shifted, became darker. The sea is restless. Heard knocking in the walls again. The storm revealed the truth under the foundation. Should I tell him? Then, abruptly, no more entries. He closed the journal, unsettled. The walls creaked with wind. Outside, the waves crashed harder now, like fists hitting the cliff. Liam didn't notice the tension. "Can we see the top, Dad?" He hesitated. But a lighthouse wasn't exactly dangerous, not compared to everything they had survived already. "Yeah," he said. "Let's go." They climbed the spiral staircase, each step echoing. It felt endless, like ascending a rib cage built from iron. Halfway up, Liam slowed. "Dad, do you hear that?" The father paused, a faint tapping, coming from inside the walls. He forced calm into his voice. "Probably old pipes, but it sounds like someone's. It's an old building, buddy. Wind messes with stuff." Liam nodded, but uneasily. The sound stopped. At the top, the view exploded. The lantern room was dusty, glass cracked but intact. Through it, the ocean stretching endlessly, horizon glowing orange with the last breath of sunset. Liam pressed both hands to the glass. "Dad, it's the prettiest thing I've ever seen." And for a moment, a real, honest moment, the father felt peace. But the peace didn't last, because on the far edge of the platform, beneath a tarp weighted with rocks, he saw something strange. "Stay here," he told Liam. He crossed the lantern room and pulled the tarp aside. Underneath, a hatch. A metal hatch set into the lighthouse floor, newer than the rest of the structure, modern bolts, a reinforced seal, and carved into the metal, that same symbol from the box, waves around a sun. His heart hammered. Why would a lighthouse need a second, hidden chamber? Why would anyone seal it with this much precision? He tried the handle. Locked. The hatch didn't budge. Liam watched from across the room, eyes big. "What's down there?" "I don't know." But he had a guess. Whatever his great-grandfather hid was important enough to guard. And the carved wooden box in the keeper's house, the one with the metal clasp, suddenly felt like the key. They returned downstairs as daylight drained from the world. He lit the old lantern, its warm glow filling the room in trembling light. Liam sat beside him, elbows on knees, watching as he gently pried the clasp on the wooden box with a piece of rusted metal. It snapped open, the lid creaked, and inside, not money, not jewels, not valuables, maps, old hand-drawn nautical maps, and beneath them, a sealed envelope, yellowed with age, his name written on it, his full name. "Dad," Liam whispered. His hands shook as he opened it. Inside was a letter, written decades ago, addressed not to him, but to the last Macready blood to reach the lighthouse. He read aloud, voice barely steady. "If you are reading this, the sea has already chosen you. Our family kept something hidden, not treasure, not gold, but something more powerful. The room beneath the lantern holds the truth. Guard it, use it, and do not let the wrong hands find it. Signed, Elias Macready, his great-grandfather." Liam leaned closer. "Dad, what does it mean?" He exhaled slowly. "I don't know yet." But inside, something trembled. Fear, excitement, responsibility, and a sense, deep and old, that he had stepped into a legacy he never asked for. He looked at the hatch keyhole. Whatever waited under the lighthouse was meant for him. And maybe, just maybe, it would change their lives forever. He didn't sleep much that first night in the lighthouse. The wind pressed itself against the old glass like it wanted to climb inside, whistling through tiny cracks in the frame. The sea kept its rhythm below, relentless, indifferent, eating at the cliffs the way time ate at people. Liam had crashed almost instantly, curled on the old cot in the keeper's house, wrapped in every blanket they could find. Kids knew how to surrender to exhaustion. Grown men had to wrestle with their thoughts first. He sat at the little wooden table, the lantern painting slow shadows on the walls, the letter from Elias Macready spread out in front of him. The room beneath the lantern holds the truth. Guard it, use it, and do not let the wrong hands find it. He ran his finger along the ink as if touch could bring the dead man closer. The man who, in some long-ago photograph, had stared down a storm like he was born out of it. "What did you hide, old man?" he murmured. He looked up at the ceiling, at the faint outline of the spiral staircase overhead. A room under the lantern, sealed by a hatch that wasn't original to the structure. Someone had gone to a lot of trouble to make sure whatever was down there didn't get found by accident. If he'd learned anything from life, it was this. People don't hide worthless things. They hide what they're terrified to lose, or ashamed to admit they have. The wooden box sat beside the letter, filled with maps as fragile as old skin. He took one out, spreading it carefully on the table. It wasn't just a nautical chart. It was their coastline, sketched in obsessive detail. Every inlet and rock outcrop labeled in looping handwriting. Currents marked, depths, hazard zones. And near the base of the cliff where the lighthouse stood, someone had drawn a small symbol, a circle with waves around it, same as the one on the hatch. Beside it, barely visible unless the light hit just right, was a single word. Root. He frowned. Root. Not vault, not room, not treasure. Root. Roots weren't always visible, but they were the reason something still stood. Maybe Elias Macready had been more poet than the stern photograph suggested. He pulled another map. This one wasn't of the sea. It was of the rock beneath the lighthouse. Cross-sections, angles, lines that made the ground look like a puzzle dissected. At the very top of the drawing sat the lighthouse, drawn like a simple pillar. Beneath it, a shaded section, notched, reinforced, marked with that same symbol again. "You dug into the cliff," he whispered. "You crazy old man." A floorboard creaked behind him. He turned. Liam stood in the doorway, hair mussed, eyes heavy with sleep. Blanket dragged around his shoulders like a cape. "Why are you still up?" the boy mumbled. "Thinking," his father answered. "That's dangerous," Liam said, with the faintest of sleepy smiles. He had his mother's sarcasm. "Come look at this," the father said softly. The boy shuffled over, bare feet whispering against the plank floor. He climbed onto the chair beside his dad and stared at the map. "Is that under us?" "Looks like it." "Like a secret basement?" "Something like that." Liam's eyes brightened a little. "You think there's treasure?" "I don't know." He did know one thing, though. Whatever was down there, finding it would be better than going back to the streets. Even if it was just a safe room, a dry space, old supplies, anything. Anything that made this inheritance more than 4 weather-beaten walls and a salty view. "Can we open the hatch?" Liam asked. "It's locked." "With what?" "A lot of metal and probably some old sailor magic." Liam scrunched his nose. "Is that real?" "Feels like it." The boy looked at the box, at the maps, then back at his father. "Maybe the key is here." "Maybe." Or maybe... Liam gestured vaguely upward. "Up there somewhere." The father studied him. Kids had a way of sounding foolish right up until they were right. "We'll check in the morning," he said. "Now try to sleep, okay?" "'Kay." Liam slid off the chair, then paused. "Dad?" "Yeah?" "Do you think God did this?" "Did what?" "Gave us this place. Now, when we didn't have anywhere else." The question cut deeper than any letter. He swallowed. "I don't know how it all works," he said honestly. "But, yeah, I think maybe he had something to do with it." Liam nodded, satisfied with that. Then maybe he doesn't want us to be on the streets anymore. The father's throat tightened. "I hope not, buddy." "I prayed," Liam added softly, "for a home." He turned and padded back to the cot before his dad could answer. The man stared at the maps long after the boy lay still. A home. The word felt heavy, unfamiliar. But here, between the wind and the waves and the bones of his own family, it didn't feel impossible anymore. Morning came, wrapped in fog. The world outside the window had softened into a blur of gray and pale blue. The sea just a suggestion of motion and sound. It fit the mood inside his chest, things taking shape but not yet clear. Liam bounced awake faster than any alarm. "Can we go up?" he asked, already hopping into his 2 big shoes. "You didn't even eat yet," his father protested. "We have crackers." "Crackers aren't breakfast. We had worse." The boy wasn't wrong. The man sighed, grabbed the least stale pack from their bag, and they each ate a few standing at the doorway, listening to distant gulls hidden somewhere in the fog. Then, together, they climbed. The spiral stairs felt different by daylight, less ominous, more like the inside of a spine holding the tower upright. Halfway up, the tapping sound came again. Steady, rhythmic, not quite random, not quite patterned. Liam grabbed his dad's sleeve. "You hear that?" "Yeah. Told you it wasn't pipes." The tapping stopped the moment they reached the top. The lantern room was brighter now, glass catching the milky light. The sea beyond looked infinite and unreal, like a painting half finished. The hatch waited in the floor, quiet, unassuming. The symbol on it seemed sharper today, as if the salt air had polished it in the night. The father knelt beside it, running his fingers along the seal. No keyhole, he muttered. No hinges you can see. This wasn't meant to be easy. Liam crouched too, pushing his hair out of his face to peer at the metal. His small hand traced the circle and waves emblem. Maybe this is the keyhole, he suggested. It's just not a hole. His dad almost dismissed it. Then he thought about the old journals, the strange way Elias wrote, the word root instead of basement. Maybe Liam was closer than either of them realized. Got the box? His father asked. They'd brought it up with them. Liam slid it across the floor. The symbol carved into its lid was the same, but etched into wood instead of steel. The father compared the two, metal and timber, old and older. Look, Liam said. It's like the box symbol is inside the hatch symbol. He tilted his head, then placed the box directly over the emblem on the hatch. It fit, too perfectly to be an accident. The carved sun and waves circle aligned exactly with the engraved one beneath. For a moment, nothing happened. Then the box vibrated faintly under their hands. It felt like the tower itself took a breath. Dad? I don't know, he whispered. Hold on. A soft click sounded under the metal. The symbol on the hatch rotated a fraction of an inch. The box grew warm. The father snatched his hands back on instinct. Liam did too, eyes wide. Another click. A third. Then the whole hatch shuddered, dust jumping along its edges. Slowly, like an eye opening after a long sleep, it lifted. Air rose from below, cool, stale, carrying faint traces of oil and salt and something metallic. No way, Liam breathed. The father's heart pounded so loud he could hear it in his ears. Stay behind me, he murmured. He angled the lantern toward the opening. Stairs descended into the dark, narrower and steeper than the ones they'd climbed to get here, carved into stone, reinforced with beams that looked newer than the lighthouse walls. This was not part of the original design. Who builds a basement at the top of a tower? Liam whispered. People who don't want others to find it, his father answered, or people who don't want the sea to take it. They looked at each other. For a brief second, fear and excitement warred on both their faces. Then the father went first. The light flickered as he descended, the lantern casting trembling arcs along the stone. The air grew colder, denser, but breathable. Liam followed close, a hand on his father's jacket, not wanting to be left alone in the thin circle of light. At the bottom of the stairs, the space opened into a small chamber carved directly into the cliff rock, maybe 10 by 12 feet. The ceiling was low, but not low enough to crouch. Shelves lined 2 of the walls, heavy with metal boxes, ledgers, rolled up oilcloth. On the far side stood a large safe, built into the stone, the kind banks used decades ago. A square door, iron wheel, combination dial. The same symbol of waves around a sun sat at its center. Liam let out a low whistle. This looks serious. Yeah, his father replied, voice dry. I'd say so. He approached slowly, lantern held high. The safe wasn't rusted through. Whoever built this vault knew how to keep sea air at bay. The dial showed 3 faint scratches beside certain numbers, like someone had run their fingernail there repeatedly, as if they'd been writing a code their future self would remember, or leaving a hint for someone else. You think it still opens? Liam asked. Only one way to find out. A long time ago, before debt and eviction notices and sleeping under bridges, he'd worked part-time at a hardware store. The old owner had an antique safe in the back, and on slow days, he'd taught him how the old combination locks worked. It's all about tension, the man had said. Not just numbers, feeling for the catch when the tumblers line up. He hoped his fingers remembered. He turned the dial slowly, listening more with his fingertips than his ears. Around once to clear it. then left, easing past numbers, feeling for resistance. The first scratch was near 17. He stopped there, then right, to the second scratch near 32, then left again to the third mark, 9. At each point, he felt a barely perceptible shift in pressure. "Please," he whispered. The wheel turned under his hand with a heavy, satisfying clunk. "No way," Liam gasped. The safe door groaned, then swung inward. The lantern's glow spilled over what lay inside. Not cash, not gold bars stacked in neat rows, but rows of smaller lockboxes, each labeled with names, dates, and ship insignias, ledgers, envelopes thick with documents. On the top shelf, sitting by itself, was a heavy wooden case with brass corners. It looked like the kind of chest wealthy captains use to keep valuables in, small enough to carry, too important to leave out in the open. The father's disappointment flickered once, then faded. He'd been ready to see nothing. Anything more than that was a gift. "What is all this?" Liam asked. "Records," his father murmured, scanning the labels. "Harbor lines, shipping companies, insurance seals." He lifted one, ledger. The McCready name appeared on the spine. He opened it. Inside were neat columns of numbers, cargo descriptions, coordinates, signatures. A detailed record of ships guided safely into harbor by this lighthouse over decades. But scattered among them were other entries underlined in red. "Salvage," he read aloud. Cargo claim, salvage rights." He flipped pages faster now. "Dad?" Liam asked. "Is it bad?" "No," he said slowly. "I think it might be the opposite." He'd never thought about it before, but of course, storms didn't just swallow ships. Sometimes captains abandoned cargo. Sometimes companies went bankrupt. Sometimes no one came to claim what washed ashore. And if the McCready family had kept meticulous records, if they'd filed salvage rights properly, if the world had moved on and forgotten, this might be worth something, he whispered. "Like, how much something?" Liam asked. "I don't know." But his voice had changed. Hope had sharpened its edges. He set the ledger down and reached for the wooden case. It was locked with a simple brass keyhole. The key wasn't anywhere visible. He looked around the chamber. Liam had already started exploring the shelves, touching nothing, just watching. "Don't move anything yet," his father cautioned. "We don't know what matters most." The boy nodded, wide-eyed. The father returned to the open safe. On the inside of the door, almost hidden in the shadow, was a small metal hook. Hanging from it was a key. He almost laughed. "You've got to be kidding," he muttered. "They hid the key inside the thing it opens?" Liam asked. "No," he said, holding it up. "They hid the key to something else inside the thing guarding all of this." The key fit the wooden case perfectly. The latch snapped open with a click that echoed in his bones. He lifted the lid. Inside, resting on dark velvet, were certificates, not paper bills, not colorful bonds, ownership documents, shares in a shipping company whose name he'd seen painted on freighters even as recently as a few years ago. Old, yes, but corporate logos didn't change that much. Some of the certificates were stamped void, but a thick stack was stamped with something else, unclaimed dividends in trust. "Dad, what is it?" Liam whispered, sensing the shift in the air. He swallowed. "It's part of a company, a big one. I think your great-grandfather never cashed these in." "Why not?" "Maybe he didn't know how. Maybe he didn't trust banks. Maybe he thought keeping everything under the lighthouse was safer than letting anyone else touch it." His hands shook as he flipped through. Each certificate bore the McCready name. Elias. Then Later, another initial, M. McCready. His grandfather. The chain had broken after that. The papers stopped. No one had come to claim anything in decades. Can we turn it into food? Liam asked, very practical. The man laughed once, raw. If I'm right, buddy, we can turn it into a lot more than food. Like, enough so we don't sleep in shelters anymore? Yeah, he whispered. Enough for that. He suddenly felt very small inside that chamber, like the rock around him was pressing in. This wasn't just about money. It was about responsibility, legacy, choices. Elias hadn't been hoarding treasure. He'd been safeguarding it, maybe waiting for someone who wouldn't waste it, someone who needed it and understood the cost of having nothing. Why did nobody else claim it? Liam asked quietly. Didn't they know? Maybe the only person who did know died before he could tell anyone, his father said, and the world forgot. He looked at his son. But we're here now. Liam nodded slowly. So, what do we do? It was a good question. He pictured walking into some corporate office, clothes still worn thin, explaining that his great-grandfather had left him secret shares in a company worth who knew how much, documented in a cliffside vault under an old lighthouse. It sounded insane. We don't rush, he decided aloud. We do this smart. He placed the most important-looking documents into his backpack, certificates, a few ledgers, the letter from Elias, proof the vault was real, proof these weren't stolen. The rest, he left where they were. The sea might hate paper, but the rock had kept it safe this long. It could keep it a little longer. As they climbed back up, the air grew warmer again. The hatch closed behind them with a muted thump, the symbol on its surface cooling under his palm as if relieved to return to sleep. They stepped into the lantern room, into the soft gray of mid-morning. The fog had thinned, revealing streaks of pale sun and endless water. Liam leaned against the glass, staring out. Dad? Yeah? Does this mean we're rich? The man leaned beside him, eyes on the horizon. I don't know what the world will call it yet, he said honestly. But I know this. We're not nothing anymore. We're not forgotten. Liam was quiet for a moment. I never thought we were nothing, he said matter-of-factly. Even when we slept in the car, we still had each other. The father's throat closed up. Yeah, he murmured. You're right. But, Liam added carefully, I'd be okay if we had, like, walls and beds and food that doesn't crunch when it's not supposed to. He laughed, the sound raw but real. Me too, kid. They spent the rest of the day exploring the house with different eyes. The broken things looked fixable now, not fatal. The leaks in the roof were weekend projects instead of disasters. The peeling paint became something they could someday choose a new color for, not a symbol of decay they were doomed to live inside. That afternoon, a small fishing boat passed in the distance. The captain waved. The boy waved back vigorously, almost falling over in his enthusiasm. The father found the old radio in the keeper's house. Silent, but maybe repairable. There was a small town down the coast, reachable by a rough road that wove along the cliffs. Somewhere there, he knew, was a library with internet access. Maybe a lawyer who owed a favor to the pastor who had given him the letter. Maybe someone who'd believe a man who showed up with documents instead of empty hands. As the sun dipped and painted the sea copper, they sat outside on the rocky bluff, backs against the lighthouse, watching waves crash below. If we get money, Liam said suddenly, can we help other people too? What do you mean? Like the kids at the shelter? And Mrs. Alvarez, Remember? She always gave us extra soup." "Yeah, I remember." "They prayed with us too," Liam said. "So if God answered, shouldn't we share?" The man stared at his son, a kind of awe blossoming in his chest. "Yeah," he said quietly. "Yeah, buddy. I think that's exactly what we should do." The sea roared approval below. The wind eased. For the first time in a long time, he felt something inside him unclench. He tilted his head back against the stone and whispered, so quietly only the sky could hear, "Thank you. Not just for the vault, not just for the papers, but for reaching back through generations of broken men and restless wanderers to leave a legacy that didn't end with abandonment." That evening, as darkness fell and they lit the lantern for the first time in decades, the beam swept across the water in a slow, steady arc. A promise, a warning, a sign. Boats far offshore might not recognize the pattern, might not know the story behind it, but they would see the light and know someone was here. Someone was keeping watch. Someone had come home. Down below, hidden in the roots of the lighthouse, the vault waited quietly. The records waited. The future waited. Tomorrow, they would walk into town, dressed in the same worn clothes, but carrying proof that the world had miscounted them, that they were more than the labels pinned to them by strangers and circumstance. But for tonight, it was enough to sit in the glow of the lantern and the steady breathing of his sleeping son and know that they were not adrift anymore. They were anchored. They were Macready's. And for the first time in years, when he closed his eyes, he didn't see alleys and cold concrete. He saw waves kissing stone, light cutting through fog, and a door opening in the dark to a room full of carefully kept promises, waiting patiently for the day someone brave enough and desperate enough would finally unlock them.